Doo-da-doo-doo. Hello, everyone. Oops, I forgot to check something. My bad. In case the sound was off, I forgot to change something. Okay, that should fix the sound if the sound was having issues. But welcome everyone. I decided to do a gorilla stream. I was in the mood, so we are going to be continuing with our read along of the Warhammer 30K book Titandeath. Um, Previously on, our antagonist Legion discovered that maybe if you fuck around with demons, you'll find out. As the decided to listen to an evil tech priest who said I had a great idea. I had a great idea to slam a demon into your Titan. It'll be really cool. Khorne wills it, so he's going to be dealing with the consequences of that. Um, then our mommy in charge of our all female legion is gonna die soon, so she is doing one big Hail Mary battle against the traitors, along with like I think it's 22 other Titan legions in this massive battle that fucking Sanguinius has organized to try and take back the area of space. And then Sanguinius was talking about the purpose of the battle and why it's important that all the Titans are fighting here and not on Terra because they'd fuck up the planet if they did. And so he's trying to buy as much time as possible. And then he was like, you know what the most important thing in warfare is? Theatrics. And he fucking leaps out of his Stormbird and just goes bayonet charging an Imperator class Titan. So that's where we left off. Was Sanguinius and his sanguinary guard literally about to melee an Imperator Titan. So I hope you guys are all excited, ready. Get yourself a tasty snack and or a comfy beverage, and kick back. If you have any questions, just let me know during the stream, and I will answer them. Oh, I also picked out the because we're at about the last, I think, like 25% of this book. Um, and I've got the next book that, to start doing a read along stream for, which is going to be book 2 of the Gortrek and Felix series from Warhammer Fantasy. Because you don't really need book 1, and it's kind of an anthology and kind of meh as a book, but book 2 is phenomenal. It introduces Best Boy, Thanquil the Skaven. Book 2 is called Skaven Slayer, and it is absolutely hilarious. Skaven, truly the best species in all of Warhammer. Yep, you haven't been here since last year, Ruff. Well, welcome, welcome, and enjoy your chalky hearts, Hayase. The heavens split over the bowed backs of 1,000 Titans. A sacred luminance outshone the sun. The clouds cracked and the sky wept tears of light. A lord of angels flew down from his high palace to bring justice to the betrayers. Arms spread, wings spread, and gold-limbed. He swooped across the field of iron. Guns roared and barked. Machine giants wailed their terrible belligerent songs. All was thunder and death. But none could touch him. A mighty halo grew around his head, and a curious magic worked its spell upon the field. A trick of Beta Garmin's meager light, or a conjuration of fatigued, machine-linked minds. However it occurred, all saw it, and those who did could never forget. Sanguinius grew. One second. Why is this in slow mode? Oh, wait. Well, if a mod shows up, they can turn it off. I don't know how to turn it off right now. I'm not gonna look it up. He filled the air, swelling with otherworldly power, until his limbs encompassed all the heavens and the earth beneath, showing up the meanness of mortal life with his perfection. For the moments the vision lasted, he seemed in truth an angel of olden legend. not sprung from gene forge at science's command, but wrought upon the anvils of heaven by grim, loving gods to be the correction of wayward humanity. To the princeps of the loyal legios he was a being of purest light, clean and invigorating, the herald of hope and peace. His sword was the bringer of regretful cuts, the precise amount delivered to bring about the end of bloodshed, then to be sheathed forever and drawn no more. In his radiance they all glimpsed anew the reason why they were fighting, forgotten by many weary and blunted hearts, and saw again the vision that had sent mankind away from its blasted homeworld and into the stars. Not for conquest, nor for material gain and the oppression of others for the sake of power, but to realize the grand designs of the Emperor and bring harmony not only to mankind, but to all other creatures who valued peace. Within the manifolds of their machines, not a few of them wept to be reminded of what could have been and what had been lost. For those he came for, the vision was dark. His panoply, spear and sword, were bloody with the promise of vengeance to come. His eyes burned with furious judgment. The feathers of his wings screamed through the air, each one sounding a different accusation. To those who had fallen far from noble beginnings, he was a reminder of what they had abandoned. To those whose wickedness had threatened to overthrow them from the very beginning, he seemed to speak directly, condemning them for their turpitude, and showing to them the depth of their crimes. The battle faltered, las beams still struck, shells still flew, void shields thrummed and crackled. Nothing could stop the war of men-machines. There were too many devices on board, the Titans dedicated to the continuation of violence, half-minds and mental extensions that perform tasks with near autonomy. But if weapons did not fall silent and slip from slackened grips, as would have been the case when war was closer and more personal, the men and women whose souls the god machines borrowed were still affected. Awe and fear entered the hearts of them all. The light changed, like a bright sun moving behind a cloud and casting the world back into daytime shadow. Sanguinius returned to what he was, a being created by the pinnacle of humanity's genomic arts, godlike, but not a god, a storm of missiles rushing at the traitor warlords from the wings of the stormbirds took the vision's place, with Sanguinius and his escorts of false angels at their center. Sanguinius folded back his wings, sending himself into a steep, rapid dive. The Imperator Axis Mundi grew before him. It wore a face that boldly proclaimed the sensibilities of its new masters. A skull, weeping tears of blood carved from faceted gemstones the size of a space marine. Las beams flicked blind needle jabs, graceful arcs of tracer bullets curved towards him. A single hit to his wing, and he would fall into the broil of fire and death. There were none, though projectiles filled the space around him. I do not die here today, he thought. Within his helm he gritted his teeth. Welters of data spread themselves over his helm plate. Most urgent to his suit cogitator was the strength of Axis Mundi's void shields, and it presented the facts of his front and center. Ornamented with red runes that promised imminent disaster, with pertinent numerical details in large amber digits to prove the warning's veracity. According to the systems of his golden plate, the void shields were still engaged, and at high levels of potency. Sanguinius was coming in too fast. He would trip their displacement reaction. If he were fortunate, he would be atomized as his being was displaced into the warp. If he were not, he would arrive there alive. I do not die here today, he whispered. Let me check something. There we go. Sorry about that. With his, yeah. The combat chatter of his legion rattled in his ears. His sons were terse to the point. Oh, terse, to the point. Never boasting, never jibing. They were efficient killers. The anvil was taking too long to capture. If it were not wrested from the traitor's hands, the battle on the ground would be for nothing. "I do not die here today," he said again, louder. He knew where he would die. He was going to die at the hands of his brother upon the vengeful spirit. Horus's grinning, exultant face dogged his every waking moment. The pain of his death seeped backwards down the timeline, polluting the present, hurting him now, becoming more tangible as he approached that final breath. And beyond that fateful moment, in the future, the pain grew, as his death unleashed in full the terrible twin curses locked up in his son's gene seed. His gene seed. But not today. Not now. "I do not die here today!" He held his sword out, point forwards. Axis Mundi was too mighty a being to concern itself with something as inconsequential as a Primarch, and ignored him. Its defenders shot at him from the towers of the fortress Acropolis that clung to its back. The Titan concerned itself with its god-sized equals, unleashing apocalyptic weaponry at the foe machines. It carried the same armament on each upper limb, vast cannons capable of slaying warlords with a single shot. They spat electric blue rivers of plasma into the Imperial ranks that crackled and buzzed and beat at Sanguinius with stellar heat. When they shut off, they left broad glowing tunnels of ionization through the air. Every discharge was accompanied by a deafening whooping and a shock front of incandescent gas. Each eruption consumed thousands of liters of coolant. The waste gases whooshed out of the weapon vents, ranged towards the rear, bleeding out the weapon's heat with it. Then the process began again. The individual cells in the charging coils lighting in sequence, preparing to unleash death. It fired again. The heat was near enough to singe the Primarch's feathers, and when the stream was shut off, he was buffeted by the overpressure of a reactor detonation. Axis Mundi deigned to see him. The head moved. The eyes on an Imperator were large enough to serve as true oculi. Tiny figures moved on the command deck behind them. The Titan might hold him in contempt, but its crew deemed him a threat. The fire coming from the fortress intensified. "I do not die here today!" Sanguinius shouted at Axis Mundi in open challenge. The Titan was ahead of him. He would be on it in seconds. Its immensity was all too apparent, so close. From its bastion feet to the top of its tallest tower, it was nearly twice the height of a warlord Titan, and much heavier. A small army was garrisoned within. Tech thralls and Scutarii lined the ramparts, adding their fire to that of emplaced guns. Bullets streaked past that tingled Sanguinius's inhuman senses with the buzz of radioactivity. The alarms of his helm were blaring at him. The void shields were visible at a thin skin of purple-blue. Not quite there in a real sense. They looked out of place upon reality, like pressed flowers slipped into a book of technical blueprints. They presented great danger. "I do not die here today!" he roared. Missiles loosed by his gunship slammed into the void shields, together with the concentrated barrage from his ships in orbit. Lances boomed through heat-shocked air. Fire rolled around the machine. The voids gave out with squealing pops, but when the fire cleared and the last of the lances snapped off, Axis Mundi was unscathed. More warnings sang at him. The Titan's reactor would have the void shields online again in seconds. Other god machines were taking the chance to attack the unshielded Imperator. Its armor was thick, paint blistered, metal ran, but no damage was done, and power signatures building the reactor hard informed Sanguinius that his opportunity was limited. "I do not die here today!" He flew in fast, his warriors boosting their winged jump packs to keep pace with him. He alighted on the Acropolis battlements amid a blizzard of laslights and bullets. Then the killing began. Hey, Netrunner, welcome, welcome. The cyborg warriors of the Mechanicum felt no fear, not as the Space Marines were fearless, whose alterations and conditioning enabled them to discount the emotion, or funnel it into more productive uses. But who still experienced it? No, the cyborgs could not feel it at all. The parts of the brain responsible for this most preservative of emotions were excised or bypassed. Even if they experienced fear, most of them could be brought under the complete control of their masters at the flick of a switch, and be sent to their deaths, whatever their sentiments on the matter. Between them, the blade and carmine and the spear of Telesto obliterated every warrior who came against the Primarch. Goblets of flesh spattered his battle plate. Blood sprayed up the rampart walls. Oil ran freely from the rampart's guttering. Metal rang off ceramite armor. A hulking myrmidon clad in black ran from a tower doorway. As Sanguinius dispatched a pair of tech thralls, he spun about and leveled his spear, its arcane energy projectors vaporizing the cyborg into mist. His sons were landing amid the wrathful bombardment of the loyal Titans. Guns blazing, jets roaring, alighting on the wall walk and the towers between eruptions of fire. They landed, scrabbling on the dome of the head. They arced gracefully down into the walkway. Between Acropolis and Cizella as god weapons carved out scars on the Titan's thick hide. Death was around them, but they did not care. They were death. Their bolters banged death's drumbeat, each lick ending in a catastrophic crash that sundered the organic from the artificial and rendered the question of the weakness of the flesh moot. Sanguinius' teeth itched. An annoying whine clawed at his ears, with an otherworldly note halfway between music and a shout of triumph. The Imperator's void sprang back into life. Most of his sons had landed, but not all. 3 passed through the raised voids without harm. 2 more were displaced by the warp tech defenses. 1 vanished in a clap of orange light. The other disintegrated, a severed golden arm crashing down in front of Sanguinius, bolter emptying itself in the dead man's grip. He paused a moment. The arm reminded him of the wound inflicted upon Ascalon by Kurtz. It reminded him of all the insults inflicted on his sons by the traitors. His anger grew, red, strong, atavistic. "Into the Titan! Kill them all!" he bellowed. His warriors were happy to obey, slaughtering the so-called New Mechanicum slaves like helpless livestock and disappearing within the many portals that led inside the Acropolis. Sanguinius cast around for a swift solution, the problem of Axis Mundi. He glanced down, to his left, to where the mighty head swung across the field, seeking new victims. Between the sheets of fire and energy blazing off its void shields, within his helm Sanguinius' eyes narrowed, and fixed upon his target, he turned, opened wide his wings, and leapt. God, Sanguinius is such a fucking boss. I love it. I love this baller-ass moves right here. Such a Chad. That's a real takeaway. We love our beautiful golden hawkboy son. There's a reason why he was everybody's favorite. Borrowed glimpses of the chaos inside the Imperator played over Sanguinius' helm plate. He could, if he wished, view the Autosense's feed of 100 men at once, each vid image smaller than a newborn's fingernail, though perfectly clear to his Emperor-made sight. 5 sanguinary guard followed him down the command head. The rest fought their way into the engine. Working in 2s and 3s, they scoured the fortress of hostiles, then began the long descent into the machine's interior, towards its down decks and the vulnerable mechanisms they housed. Hey, Christy, welcome, welcome. A laudable strategy, but Sanguinius was set on a literal decapitation strike. Something that would be seen, something that would be noted. As he plummeted to the head, couched the spear of Telesto under his left arm and let fly with its energy burst. How the weapon generated the pulses was unknown. It was a thing of high science, a relic of greater days, and little in the current diminished age could resist its power. Where energy blast met the head, it disintegrated a perfectly round hole, neat as trepanation. Ceramite plasteel alloy, honeycombed plascrete, and adamantium skullplate vanished together. The gap seemed too small for the Primarch's body, but he stretched his wings high over his head so that his primary feathers touched, while his feet threaded the needle's eye of the hole. From leap to blast to ingress to the command deck took 2 seconds. Far too little time for the crew to react. Golden boots clanged hard on deck plating. Sanguinius was moving before the ringing impact died, allowing 5 of his sons to follow him. Moderati started in their command thrones. Lesser servants of the Neokora goggled at this avatar of vengeance come into their midst. Their princeps was the first to react, understandably so. He stood upon an elaborate dais, encased in a full haptic harness, and his blinded eye sockets plugged directly into the great machine's senses. But still, he saw. "Bring him down!" he roared. Sorry. I did that a little higher pitch than I was planning on, and that is harder on my throat. The Titan's warhorn blare voicing his panic simultaneously. The command Sizella of the Imperator was impressive, not like the cramped spaces that accommodated the crew of smaller Titans. It had many commonalities with a void ship command deck, though the architecture bore the signs of religious expression absent from those of the Emperor's forces. It was as much a temple to the living machine god as a control room. Its systems adorned with multiple iterations of the glowering half-cybernetic skulls of the Opus Machina. These had been defiled, the foreheads branded with the Eye of Horus and the unclean octet symbol of chaos that, though executed with great art, seemed to have a crudeness that lessened the character of the entire deck. Myrmidons in the black of the dark mechanicum lurched into sudden life from century alcoves about the bridge's upper deck. They came for the Primarch with fearless purpose. All were armed with wicked close combat attachments, sheathed in disruption fields. The potency of the mechanicum's ranged weapons rendered them unsuitable for use in so sacred a place. Mechanicum Myrmidons were warrior priests, dedicating their lives to the machine god through battle. They had 4 arms or 6. Their brains and remaining organs were protected by centimeters of armored plating. Every one of them had a century of practice, backed up with terabytes of inloaded combat engrams. Those selected to guard the holiest of holies were the most elite, and were a match for the Sanguinary Guard. Furious combat erupted as the two forces met. Bolts scored the air and burst on armored walls. Disruptor fields roared as they clashed. Moderati attempted to pilot their giant charge while battle raged around them. The princeps howled imprecations. The armored gates of the Titan's antennae opened, and tech guards streamed within, raising uranium carbines and volkites against the Blood Angels. A Sanguinary Guard died when a steersman slumped over his... A Sanguinary Guard died, then a second. 4 Myrmidons fell in return. A Moderati steersman slumped over his deck, his back blown out by a stray bolt. Hey yo, blowing out his back. Servitors jerked in their alcoves as they were hit. The movements of the god machine became erratic. "Primarch! Slay the Primarch!" shouted the priests. Sanguinius rose up to his full height. He cast the veil of mortality aside, giving the false prophets of the machine god a clear view of his full and terrifying power. "I do not die here today!" he roared. With the blade and carmine, he cleaved a Myrmidon in twain, spun around, and knocked another back with a blow from his wings as he brought the spear of Telesto up, leveled it, and fired. The cone of energy burst over a Sanguinary Guard battling 2 Myrmidons. He was preserved. The emissions of the spear would harm none of the blood, and the sanguinary guard was not even staggered, but the myrmidons were shattered into scrap. The blast slammed into the princeps and consumed him also. Having lost the linchpin of the god engine's neural architecture, the Moderati were subjected to the full force of the Imperator's mighty soul. They began to scream. Sanguinius was a living golden wind. His blades whirled and descended, leaving naught but ruin in their wake. The tech guard were slain, driven back and held in the door. The myrmidons died. The great Titan lumbered drunkenly, tipping sideways, setting the deck at an angle. Bodies and machine parts skidded over the ground. "Finish it!" ordered Sanguinius as he stood alone in the gate and held back the engine's frantic garrison. 2 of the 5 sanguinary guard that had come with him into the Cizella remained. They put up their weapons and unclasped melta-flasks from their thighs. They had only one apiece, but their keen minds identified the most vulnerable parts of the machine's command systems, and they clamped the fusion charges in place there. The Moderati were screaming without drawing breath. Bright fire shot from their eye sockets as they jerked like victims of electrocution. Alarms blared from every quarter. Panicked shouts came from deep within the god machine. "Evacuate!" ordered Sanguinius, still slaughtering the Scitarii coming to the door. He aimed his spear behind him and blew out one of the great cathedral windows that served the god engine for eyes. The sound of metal giants at war roared in from outside. Dust, smoke, and the smell of burning filled up the Cizella. "Withdraw, my sons! Withdraw!" The 2 guard ran for the broken eye, jump packs igniting. They spread their metal wings and soared away. Sanguinius backed away from the door, killing the men machines that spilled after him. Their fury was so great at his desecration of their temple that they threw their lives away thoughtlessly. One second. Okay, I was just checking something. Step by step, he moved across the heaving deck, sword and spear spinning about him. Every move calculated to end a life. Anger that was equal to his brother Angron's and as much a part of him as Angron's was, rose through his body, empowering his strikes, pushing his engineered reflexes to supernatural speeds. The Titan was staggering about, hardly under control at all. Its war horns howled at the Moderati's pain. One second. I have to check something. Okay, sorry. Just want to check that. The last of the tech guard fell. The metal bombs neared the end of their countdown. Sanguinius strode to the broken window before he leapt. He looked behind him to the broken bodies tumbling over the canting deck and the Moderati thrashing in agony within their bonds. "So shall perish all who defy the will of the Emperor, whether mortal man or mighty engine." As he dropped from the window, the melta-charges blew. A contained fusion reaction slagged the central MIU interface altar. The second burned through the power balancing relays. They sank through the molten hole it had made into the lower decks of the head. Sanguinius was soaring through the air, mighty wing beats carrying him upwards towards his circling Stormbird, when a secondary explosion tore off the Imperator's face. Void Shield blew out in a catastrophic chain reaction, fire pouring from its shattered neck. Metal groaning, men screaming. The Titan toppled forward, its knees bent and its guns gouged at the earth as it kneeled. It came to a rest at a half bow, as if honoring its vanquisher. Imperial Titans greeted the sight of the fallen traitor with a mighty fanfare. The battle raged on. Look at that, Chad. That's my boy. That says Zizzle, the Sanguinor himself. Look at that. Look at that beautiful hawk boy. Chapter 25. Ill News. Gales howled around the position of the Legio Salaria. They were only the 9 of them up in their mountain eyrie. Esha Ani Mohana's Manipul and a handful of Titans orphaned by the destruction of their own units. Arrayed around the sides of an ancient landslip like votive statuettes placed on haphazard shelves, they rocked in the moaning wind. The gale called strange voices from the machine's limbs, leaving the crew trapped in the claustrophobic confines of the god engines with the eerie feeling of a haunting. Esha listened to the voices wail. They disquieted her. Not at all, but the same could not be said for all her warriors. "They were ghost voices," said Jafenir Jahan into the sepulchral quiet of the Sizella. "The lost souls of god engines, slain in the conflict, have attached themselves to the living. They want the warmth of our reactors." "Who told you this?" said Yaha, her voice high with incredulity. They were all gloveless and helmless, waiting for a battle that might never come. Jaffinir shrugged. "Locals?" she said, as if that explained it, though the opportunities to meet any of the world's inhabitants were so limited as to be non-existent. "It's the Carthaga Telepathica, all those witches in one place. They wear the walls of reality thin. The warp is not far away." She glanced sidelong to the empty station of Mafani Ohana. There had been no replacement for her. What few crew the Legio had to spare came only from destroyed engines. There had been no new recruits for over a year, and the members of the Legio, finding themselves bereft of a post, had been sent to bolster the efforts on Beta Garmin II. Mafani Ohana's communications bench had been cleaned, but it was impossible to get all the blood out under wartime conditions. The whole station needed disassembly, and there was no time for that. Bits of her clung to the machinery where she had spent so much of her life. The area around her console smelled of counterseptic that could not entirely hide the scent of blood. Esha betrayed no sign of movement, but her attention followed Jaffinir's to the dead woman's seat. Her own wounds ached as she looked upon the empty chair. Neither she or Domina X Venari had fully recovered from the neurosalve attack. "What do you know about the warp?" said Yaha. "A lot more than I did when this war started. I thought—" "Don't think," snapped Yaha. "Watch. Keep your eyes open and your mind closed." Jaffinir looked sullen. "Yes, Moderati Primus," she said. Esha stayed out of their argument. She breathed deeply of the stale air. Jaffinir had a point. There was something odd about the location. When Esha was in the machine's mind, it barely affected her. But out of it she felt lightheaded and hunted, as if she were being watched. She pulled an irritated face. She was falling for the same insane superstitions ripping through the Imperial side. Talk of ghosts and demons and wicked things living on the other side of thought. Hers were wars of steel and fire, not magic. The things that swam in the Empyrean were real. Objectively so, but though nightmarish, they were also real enough to kill. They were just an exotic form of xenoorganism that was all, and therefore, worthy of contempt. The wind blew hard in challenge of her thoughts, screaming outrage through the cabling of the Titan. The princeps shifted her eyes to one of the brightest points in the head, a bank of small notification lights that flickered lazily with each of the more powerful gusts. The storm's rain was laden with corrosive salts blasted up from the dead plains. Omega-6 had modulated the void shields to keep the worst of it out, but voids were poor protection against so feeble a force as the wind. Most of it got through along with its caustic cargo, and the alkalis were slowly but surely eating their way into Domina X Venari's body. "Hey Zara, welcome, and thank you for bringing the friends." It would take centuries to compromise the Titan's armor plating, but the cabling was vulnerable. Though hyperplastic and banded plasteel protected the large pipes leading to the weapons and the major joints, they had surface areas and many joins whose seals would not hold up forever. The hydraulics would be all right for weeks, she thought, but maybe not the electrical cabling. Fine as it was, and so diffusely spread throughout the giant machine. The lights showed the status of the motive force's current through wires ranging from man-thick to pair-thin. Green for hail insulation, amber for minor, intermittent shorts, red for short-circuited. Of the dozens of little lumens, a handful were green. A lot flickered between green and amber. None, as yet, were red. Oh no, they changed the raid. No raiders for this Obsidia. It's okay. She squeezed the armrests of her command throne. Beside the never used manual controls, there were little dimples from the many times she had done it before. Always when waiting for battle. Years of her frustrations had left saggy areas in the leather, topped with white half-moon scars where her nails had pressed. Sorry, my nose was irritating me for a moment. On an impulse, she depressed the Vox switch by the motivator throttle on her left armrest. Maniple, announce yourselves, she said. She was not linked into the machine. Domina X Minari slept through the storm, facing into the rain like an Agricola bovid. Esha Ani Mohana relied purely on the Vox to communicate. Technology aeons old used by the humblest soldiers of the Imperium. Her Titans responded in order of hierarchy. Her Maniple first, then the strays attached to her command. With each Princeps she held a short conversation. Little was to be said beyond matters of lights blinking from green to amber and voices on the wind. They were all as bored and tense as she was. As Esha held her brief conference, Jafinier whispered a request for permission to leave the Sizella to Yaha, who granted it. She came back before Esha's roll call was finished, bearing mugs of scalding recaf for them all. They sat in silence, sipping the overheated liquid. A plasma reactor was useful for many things, but harnessing its exhaust to do something as simple as boil water for beverages required a certain level of skill. They were natural hunters all, but additional training was required for the crew before they were let loose on the atrium kettle. That's the most British thing for them to include, is a fucking... I know recaf is technically coffee, but, like, for them to basically have a tea brewer in the fucking Titan. Your fun British military fact, everybody, is that British armored vehicles all have tea brewers built into them as a necessary and mandatory component, because the British are a laughable people. Without access to Domina X Venari's senses, and the small window over the auger lenses of the eyes shuttered against the storm, Esha relied on the Cizella's internal screen for a view to the outside. When the last Princeps voice clicked away, she stared at it. From where they were stationed, they had a good view of the Carthaga Telepathica's base. The scale of the structure amplified the feelings of otherworldly power that surrounded it. The Carthaga Telepathica was rooted in the mountain's top. However high the original peak was, it could not have compared with mankind's improvement on geology. The needle speared the sky, the tallest man-made structure in the entire subsector. They could see only the lowest reaches of its smooth sides. Alkali clouds obscured the rest. But one had an impression of its size by the thickness of the shaft. Hey, yo! We judging things size by the thickness of their shafts? Let's go. If only that pants grab emote could be used in Twitch. Oh, man. This would be the perfect time. The top was as slender as a blade and cut into the airless void. At the base, it was 3 miles thick, a monstrous, featureless gray made of an exotic combination of various cretes, no window to break the smooth surface, nor any other mark besides. In construction, it was 2 tall triangles intersecting each other in a cruciform cross-section, rising up as a hollow-sided pyramid. Its only other feature was the forests of hawsers, thicker than Titans were tall, that descended from the heavens. They were anchored to giant plugs driven far into Beta Garmin 3's hide, all around the mountain. But from the Legio's perspective, these anchor points were not visible, and the cables seemed like spears rammed into the world. Every 300 meters on the Hawser's lengths, a warning beacon shone. Every Hawser had dozens of them, so that a shoal of red lights thronged the sky, bright and unwavering, like predators' eyes. Esha let her gaze rise up the Hawsers. Simple trigonometry gave her an idea of the needle's height. The Carthaga Telepathica was so high, and the anchor ring so far above the cloud layer, that the Hawsers were virtually parallel to the shaft of the tower. Somewhere, dozens of kilometers up, was the Astropathic Temple itself. Esha had observed it as they descended from orbit, seemingly small atop the spire that supported it. The temple was in fact large enough to house a relay choir of 1,000 astropaths, and all of their attendants. There are not many sights I have seen that have made me feel small when in command of a Titan, Esha Ani Mohana said quietly. That temple is one of them. Yeah, well, the bigger they come, Yaha said with a shrug. Jaffinir scowled at her. Don't say such ill-favored things, says the lady with the ghost fixation, said the Moderati Primus. Anyway, I outrank you, so I can say what I like. A chime from the oratorious desk interrupted the argument before it became heated. Being cooped up in the head without the harmony of the MIU was testing for them all. Yaha leaned back from her chair and glanced at Mafani Ohana's station. She looked up at Esha. A priority message for you alone. Region Command. I'll take it in the atrium, she said. Cease your arguments, both of you. Run weapons and system checks with the Moderati Bellatus. If the enemy come, I want to be ready. She looked out across the barren, rain-lashed mountainsides displayed upon the vid screen. Yellow streams boiled down gullies. Toxic mist hurried over knife-edge ridges to wherever they were going. The terrain was poor ground for Titan conflict. If they come, she said, and headed out into the atrium. She sat herself at the chart desk, keyed in her ident code, and set the device to hololithic communications. A light sculpture of Rhysand Madano coalesced into being from a cloud of dancing motes. The transmission was restricted to a haughty face atop shoulders, so that he appeared like a bad holographic memorial bust of the kind sold to civilians on post-compliance words. He was Princeps Senioris of the Warp Runners, who, by dint of having the most Titans on the mountaintop, was in overall command. Esha had fought with him at Hansu Hive several weeks before. She didn't like him. She got the impression he didn't like her. He had a weak chin. She never trusted men with weak chins. Oh, he said, as if surprised to see her. I have a spot of bad news, I'm afraid. Esha's heart clenched. She feared for her mother. Beta Garmin 2? Neocon? She said. Madano laughed lightly, a meaningless, practiced, aristocratic pleasantry that set her teeth on edge. Oh, well, not really. The battle proceeds there, as far as I'm aware. No, it's here, Beta Garmin 3. It looks like we've been rather outmaneuvered. The traitors have launched an attack on Caldera City. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing at Neocon wasn't a ruse. I did vote against it myself, but... How many? Esha cut across him. Madano had a tendency to prattle on. Steady on, old girl. I am in command here, he said, bristling. He recovered his mask of amiability quickly. It's a major attack. His image broke up suddenly, disintegrating into a shower of firefly sparks. They whirled about in an abortive attempt to make some other picture that Esha had a sudden and sincere desire not to see. She adjusted the machine's settings. Madano did not return. One second, just sipping some scrumptious wah-wah to loosen the old throat goat. I've lost you. I repeat, I've lost you. Please, remodulate projection. Parameters for heavy interference. Nothing for a moment, then shortly Madonna reappeared, as icily affable as ever. Sorry about that. Horrorless, eh? Cast an image instantaneously across a planetary system, but get a bit of weather in the way. You were saying, enemy strength. I wasn't I? Major. Large elements of the Sons of Horus Traitor Legion. Several Titan Legios. All of his Titans were supposed to be at Nearcon. Well then, it would rather appears we underestimated his strength. I'm ordering half our Titans to make for Caldera at all speed. If they push their reactors, they'll be there before nightfall tomorrow. This bloody weather will slow them down, but give them fine cover from the traitor fleet. It looks like we've been caught out. Horus wants Caldera. Why? Said Esha. What benefit is there to him in taking the planetary capital? Why? To stake claim to his own system. If he takes Caldera, that leaves our boys at Beta Garmin 3 a touch out of luck. Once he has control over Caldera, Beta Garmin 3 will fall, and Nearcon will most likely hold out against our attack. We'll be driven out of the system, and the traitors will have a clear run at the throne world. Needless to say, I'd prefer not to be the chap that's let that happen. History is always cruel to men who make mistakes. You're staying here. Your little troop of hunters is perfect to hold this terrain, but I'm sending the heavy hitters over to Caldera immediately. I don't think you should, said Esha. The wind blew louder. Dominax Venari shook. The voices whispered entreaties to her. And why on earth not? What if it's another feint? Another feint? To draw us away from here. The Diviner's Needle is the chief link we have to Terra. Madonna's grainy features pulled in and he shook his head. Communications denial? I don't think the needle is worth his time. Not for that. Besides, since the warp storms blew out, we can get through without this relay. No, I believe he wants to consolidate his hold here. Let his men have an easy passage. Nearcon was a feint. Caldera Primus is the true target. Besides, he has no more Titans. This is it. He's committed his reserves. What kind of leader indulges in a double feint for a target of low value? One who bears the title War Master, she said flatly. With all due respect, Huntress, you are wrong. At least contact the Primarch Sanguinius, she said. Why? For this? Not every battle is a match of cunning. Sometimes, and especially in engine war, brute force is the key to victory. He has showed us his hand. We should respond with a fist. My orders stand. Madonna out. 53rd Warhammer book, perfect entry point. Hello, Robo Neon. This book, though, you don't really need to have read the other 52 Horus Heresy books. It's a giant lesbian mecha battle against a former husbando. That's essentially the plot of the book. As long as you understand lesbian mecha pilots are fighting for the good guys, and the bad guys are the dudes who are sucking off each other in blood ceremonies, then you got the gist of the Horus Heresy up to this point. The image collapsed, plunging the atrium back into gloom. She sat there while the hololith sang out its drawn-out song of deactivation, a plunging note that took forever to die. Odani Jahan pulled herself out of the right-hand weapons deck, yawning widely and scratching at her head. I woke you, said Esha. She regretted it. She did not foresee much rest in their future. It doesn't matter. Odani leaned on the worktop by the Titan's tiny galley kitchen, opposite Esha. What was all that about? The end of the world, maybe, she said. She got up. Eat, prepare yourself. She checked her wrist chrono. We enter the manifold in 25 minutes. The enemy are attacking Caldera Primus. If I'm right, it won't be long before they're here too. Chapter 26. The Titandeath. Hours became days, became a week. The Titans continued the war against each other to the point of exhaustion and beyond. Luxor and Victoria's Cizella grew rank with human waste. There was no time for the Maraudurati to leave their stations. A minimum of sustenance was automatically pumped into their bodies via nasal tubes and arterial shunts. Without them, the crew would have starved to death if they did not die of dehydration first. They were bonded to machine at the deepest level, hardly aware of their mortal bodies. The need for human speech dwindled. They reacted together, fighting as one entity of a single mind. They shared their thoughts through the manifold, and though they still shouted out ranges and warnings or gave orders, they did so mechanically, like the reflexes of a lowly servitor. Their voices lost humanity. Often they said the same thing at the same time. Only the Great Mother retained a sense of self, for she was Luxor in Victoria. Together, the Great Mother and Luxor in Victoria killed their kin. Earth-shattering weapons slew metal giants. The plains around Nirkon were littered with the burning corpses of fallen mechanical gods. Such slaughter they had never seen. She wished it had remained that way. Over the days, the borders between her mind and the Titans thinned to nothing. She remembered the first binding, the touch of the machine through the mind impulse unit. She remembered its soul, raw and powerful, yet skittish as any horse, newborn and defiant of a world it did not yet understand. She remembered taming it. She remembered the events as the Titan too, his inchoate thoughts, images of things he had no names for, and therefore no true concept of, ideas that would never form until a human mind touched and shaped them. The first time the Great Mother had come into Luxor and Victoria's being, the faint traces of the other machines she had mastered clung to her soul. Like outdoor scents brought indoors, they frightened and calmed the machine at the same time. To the Titan's simple mind, it was as if a god descended through the fuzzy murk of incomprehensible data and ignited its soul with a touch. Through Mohana's humor, the Titan found the recollection amusing. Possessed by the Titan's detachment, Mohana found the memory irrelevant to the ongoing situation. Where one being began and the other ended, no theologue or day mechanic would be able to discern. This heightened union was the acme of the Princeps art. Time and experience were the only way to reach full enlightenment, and then only for a select few. Mohana Mankadavai was the first of her legio, the founding master, the mother of machines. Now she was the last of the first. Her companions had died in battle or from age as the Great Crusade went on, until only she remained to witness this new, terrible era of civil war. In its fires her daughters died, a fear that she would be left alone kindled in her breast. Luxor and Victoria wailed at the sharing. In her infologs were kept the deaths of all members of her legio. Plotted against time, the numbers formed a graph line that revealed the legio's wars. It went up with each conflict and dropped with every short period of peace. Sometimes one or two god engines would be lost, sometimes more, but never had so many been lost so quickly. The numbers rose from the beginning of Horus's betrayal, the line losing its smooth progress, climbing in jagged steps through Paramar and Edessa, Jantamar and Elp, then on to this campaign, where it rose ever more steeply through Theta Garmin, Beta Garmin III, and other engagements, until it soared high during the Third Battle of Nirkon. This death of Titans. Hers was not the only legio to suffer. She saw the corpses of many noble orders, and the same count of traitors besides. Though in all the wrecks she saw not one engine of the Legio Mortis, the War Masters favored. This would have given her pause were she not numbed with grief. Tangled in the wreckage of Titans from 40 legios were the majority of Mohana Mankata Vai's kin. 3 of her 4 myrmidons fought alongside her yet. 2 were undamaged, but the third, Adamantine Heart, was badly battered. Its pelvic gyroscopic arrays had taken a hit, and it moved with a cripple's walk. One arm terminated in a tangled mess of blackened plasteel and wire. The loss of a void shield projector made it more vulnerable still. Under normal circumstances, Mohana would have ordered Adamantine Heart away, and it would have been retrieved. There was no chance of that on the plains of Nirkon. They moved through broken hills of twisted metal. Not only god machines littered the plain, but also massive pieces of debris blasted from the hive or fallen from orbit. The 4 titans stalked their prey like a pride of lions, hugging the scrub. The battle had fragmented into 1,000 smaller confrontations. Ideal hunting for the likes of the Legio Solaria. An Auspex return pinged in Mohana Mankata Vai's mind. "Contact," she said. 900 meters in closing. Her words were carried as impulses to her Myrmidon princeps, tagged to the Auspex feed. The bright pulse of a heat source glowed on the far side of a mound of wreckage, come down from the hive. All of them shared it. Without needing to be ordered, the Titans spread out, Adamantine Heart holding back to cover, Luxor and Victoria's rear. The other 2 warlords, Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator, stalked forward. "Power profiles to low," Mohana Mankata Vai ordered. To her practiced eye, the target was probably alert. "Supposition of probable ambush. Make them think we're incautious, then counter and destroy." With Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator out in front, the Maniple moved forward towards the end of the hill of metal and broken rockcrete. They trod nimbly over lesser piles of debris and heaps of earth thrown up by the impact. Mohana remained alert for other contacts. She was not disappointed. As the Maniple neared the end of the broken hive spire, a dozen fresh contacts sprang into life. 50 engines minoris, knights, 3 banners, engaging, communicated Sagitta Ori's princeps, Katarine Mage. Gotta love these made-up 40k names. Inaccurate fusion battle cannon fire streaked past the lead titans, their void shield shone. "Forwards into them, Adamantine Heart. About and hold the rear." Mohana Mankata Vai swung her titan to the left, so that they were facing the mess of metal. Their minds conjoined. She had no need to order her crew to perform a deep Auspex sweep of the ruin. It simply happened, easy as blinking. Cavities and densities shone in contrasting colors in her mind's eye. A Knight's reactor detonated with an underwhelming sucking bang. Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator's void shields whooped. Their weapon arms swept across the field, striking out at the nimble knights. The lesser engines were attempting to get around the back, to surround the lead pair of warlords and bring down the void shields by attacking from all sides. Gatling cannons chewed up the ground, rounds deflected from ion shields. The knights were good, but some were inexperienced. One was a little slow, swinging his ion shield around to cover his side, earning a direct hit and spectacular death from Sagitta Ori's laser blasters. The knights scattered, their formations melting and reforming. All their actions were distraction. More reactor signs were igniting on the other side of the ridge. A full maniple of traitor god machines lay in wait. Standard engagement tactics dictated they would come around both sides of the obstruction and catch first maniple in a crossfire while they were dealing with the knights. Mohana Mankata Vai was not going to allow that to happen. If they had weathered the battle with a full number of engines, she surmised the enemy to be skilled. Even if they were an ad hoc formation of survivors, that still implied a certain level of intelligence when so many other titans fought alone. It would pay to be cautious. Before she acted, she let the enemy maniple split, 3 of them heading around the rear, around the near end towards Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator, 2 back towards the rear where Adamantine Heart waited. Her lead Titan's void shield suffered for the pause, but if she moved too soon, her counterattack would be spotted, and Legio Solaria would likely lose. Hold ground on my command. Push through Adamantine Heart. Maintain position. As she spoke, she was already searching out a weak spot in the metal wall before her. Finding it swiftly... Sorry, I just lost my voice for a moment. Finding it swiftly, she discharged all her weapons, bringing down a section of crumpled hive skin in an avalanche of plasteel. The enemy would have seen that. Time was of the essence. Luxor and Victoria bowed its head and charged into the gap. Metal screeched on the carapace. The Titan jarred as a sheet caught on its laser blasters. Mohana forced it through, ignoring the sympathetic pains of jagged edges slicing into Luxor and Victoria's armor plating. The Titan burst through into a void and quickly crossed, then smashed through feeble interior walls into an insect hive of rooms. The partitions were paper-thin to the giant machine, and posed no more resistance to it than a wasp nest would to a wrecking ball. Hey Scarth, welcome. Mahana felt her foot snag. The Titan staggered, but her crew were the best in the Legio, and her steerswoman corrected the error. The skin of the spire's far side was near. Now, she ordered. Luxor and Victoria's plasma reactor rumbled as the twin volcano cannons charged. Outside, Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator lumbered forwards, breaking their way through the darting banners of knights. They swatted a couple of pieces with their weapons, but otherwise paid them no heed. Their true quarry was ahead. The Myrmidons merged around the point of the fallen spire into a punishing barrage. The Imperial hunters opened fire themselves, with every weapon at their disposal, but with 3 Warlord Titans against 2, their Void Shield banks dropped rapidly. Now was the moment. Luxor and Victoria blasted a hole in the outer wall, stepped back, and barged through. She came out firing. The 3 enemy Titans had their backs to her. The other 2 were rounding the far end of the ruin. With a skill board of years of service, she had her engine target the enemies nearest to her daughter engines. Its void shields were already on the verge of collapse, and her laser blasters took the last down. Volcano cannon, she commanded. The gargantuan laser weapons fired once, their discharge twinned burning scalpels, a photonic might that sliced neatly into the Titan's back, laying open its reactor. Fortune was with her, and the power plant gushed roaring gas over the 2 Titans still facing, Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator, spoiling their aim and taxing their void shields. The damaged Titan collapsed, plasma boiling from its broken back. A concentrated volley from her laser blasters brought down one of the other Titan's void shields. Recharge weapons, she commanded. Mohana's laser blasters were at full power within seconds. The volcano cannon took much longer to charge. She could not tarry, so had her engine walk backwards, playing the multiple shots of her blaster over the leftmost Titan. Belatedly, the enemy split and began to pace away from the conflict. Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator moved up, knights still snapping at their heels. The left-hand enemy's final shield went out as the volcano cannon's ready notification sang clear and high in the manifold. Left-hand engine, right leg, she commanded. Again, the spears of light were cast. They slammed into the knee, melting the thigh armor and welding the joint solid. The Titan wobbled, thrown off balance as it attempted to take a step. Shots from First Manipul's engines in front of it sheared off its right arm, before a splash of plasma from a Sun Fury Annihilator took off its head, and it stopped dead. A blaze from carapace to waist. Now there was one enemy remaining. Mohana left it to Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator. Luxor and Victoria swung around. Mohana ordered the reactor to full output, rerouting her energy supplies to the locomotors, and urged her Titan to pursue the remaining pair of the enemy maniple around the far end of the spire. She found them venting at the damaged adamantine heart. The Legio Solaria warlord fared badly and had taken more damage. Surrounded by void displacement and the tremendous energies of Titan weapons firing, the enemy were blind to Mohana Mankatavai's approach. Luxor and Victoria opened fire directly behind him. Although the Titan the Great Mother chose was possessed of a full complement of voids, the potency of her weapons was so great it overwhelmed the shield's ability to dissipate the shots, and the Titan was carved in two. One moment, I'm gonna drink some water. Okay. Knights of House Vi had emerged from the sand and were aiding Sagitta Ori and Astra Venator in finishing off the last engine of the enemy maniple, but the engagement was not won without cost. Adamantine Heart was crippled. Energy spikes from its damaged reactor core provoked loud warnings from Luxor and Victoria's systems, imploring her to back away, but the Great Mother held her ground. "My daughter," she said. Gehenna Amana was the princeps. Her voice came over the vox clear and free of the influence of the machine. She had come out of the manifold. "Great Mother, Adamantine Heart is critically damaged. We must beg your permission to abandon the hunt." "Permission granted," the Great Mother said. Adamantine Heart's reactor surges were growing wilder by the moment. "Go, live." The crew's chances of survival outside of the machine were slim. The environmental conditions were awful, and men died where god machines fought. "Evacuation underway," Amana voxed. Mahana Mankata Vi fearlessly strode past the crippled engine as they passed, Luxor and Victoria lowered a mighty vocal salute to his wounded sister. Explosive bolts blew all around the head, and it flew free on a short-lived burst of propellant, carrying the command crew away. Tiny figures repelled from the rear balcony and began to run. Mahana Mankata Vi wished them well in her heart. Adamantine Heart's reactor blew as the remainder of the maniple drew away. The yellow glare of its detonation lit up the battlefield, as bright as a day on old Earth, before war drew its curtain of dust across the plains again. Chapter 27. Just hold on a momento. Oh snap, we're getting back to our corrupted man boy. Chapter 27. Eye of the Needle. I wonder where this is going to be taking place. Nuntio Dolores had a new voice. The old music had gone. Its war horns growled and spat, sounds too close to words for Hairtek's comfort, articulating the bloody desires of its new and furious soul. Outwardly, little seemed different about Nuntio Dolores. Its mechanical motion was supplanted by a more organic fluidity, but this was not something that would be obvious to someone not deeply familiar with the operation of god engines. It was within that Ardum Protus ritual. Alright, this is a weird sentence. Had made the greatest change. Like any Titan, Legio Volpa's war machines took on the personality imprints of their masters, and as a result they were belligerent, impatient, and reveled in destruction. Nuntio Dolores' old soul was well known for its fury. It was nothing compared to the thing that occupied the engine now. None of the machine readings made any sense. According to the Infosphere's monitoring systems, the network cogitators, logic engines, and servitors that supported the Titan's machine spirit were malfunctioning. They no longer spoke to one another. Detailed breakdowns of logic engine traffic showed nonsensical bursts of high activity that dropped to nothing and rose again, repeatedly stressing the components. Nothing but gibberish code emanated from them. It was as if they were screaming. The servitor brains were dying. Wafts of spoiling meat drifted through the Cizella from the containment jar arrays deeper in the machine. Where the servitors possessed more of their bodies, they were muscle-locked, rigid, the remains of their faces a rictus of howling rage. Their eyes, once dead and stripped of intelligence, rolled in their faces with a lunatic's anger. The landscape of the manifold had altered beyond recognition. If Hairtek attempted to visualize the machine spirit, he was confronted by a standing wave of boiling blood, in whose red surface flint skulls appeared and were sucked back in. Behind it was the new soul of the machine, furious, truculent, yet bound to Heretek's will. It would not let itself be seen, but he felt its immortal might far greater than anything that could be called forth by science alone. It possessed an awareness the old machine spirit did not. Into this deadly being, Terran Heretek's soul slotted. The heretic of the Crusade would have been appalled by this perversion of his war machine, but he reveled in his stolen power. Never had the term God Engine seemed so apt. New power surged through him as the Titan approached the defenses ringing the base of the Carthaga Mountains. The peak had lost its name, subsumed by that of the structure that was built upon it. The bare rock of the mountain's base was the needle's footing, and though remade by mankind into a neatly tiered array of defenses, its natural origins remained evident here and there. Heretek and the other altered titans marched directly at the defense lines alone. Protoss had arrogantly committed them to this fight as a demonstration of their power. They were the line breakers, sent to open a way up the mountain for those who came behind. 8 warlords were inadequate for the task. Before the ritual, Heretek would have refused, but a bloody recklessness had him. The results of the battle didn't matter to him, only the fight, the chance to spill blood and take heads. Such pleasure filled him as the Titans neared the lines, wild, uncaring, and free of thought. The storm hid them until they were 10 kilometers out. Thereafter, the defenses of the Carthaga Telepathica opened fire. Hey, Jupiter Jones! Welcome, welcome! How's my favorite smooth operator? Thousands of guns spoke. Wide shots slammed into the water sheeting over the lower slopes. Many hit home, but the void shields held, shining with a new ruddy light where they were struck. Leering demonic faces scuttered over the energy skin, jaws wide to consume the ordnance falling through the rain. Forwards! Heretek roared in his mind. His titans screeched, a sound no warhorn should be able to produce. The other 8 screamed with him, their rage voices a weapon in themselves. That shattered falling shells and sent shockwaves through the rain. Forwards! He called again. The titans built up to a run, pounding up the steepening incline, their feet gouging giant prints into soft shale. The rains had turned the mountainside into a riverine playground. Streams sped down rock-reach channels. Water leapt in muddy arcs from the gutter sprouts in the walls. It oozed from the strata of rock. It poured off the Titans' carapaces. The Titans speared out. Even so, their massive weight caused slips in the land that would have felled less nimble machines. But against all odds, they climbed upwards towards the lowest line, surrounding the first set of gates and towers that barred the Needle's principal road. Heretek was raging, shouting, nonsense. There was no coordination between the 8. They were no maniple, but a collection of mighty machine champions. They held their fire until they were close, but when the first let fly with a barrage of rockets, the rest followed suit, and the space between the Titans and the wall was filled with violent light, traded between towers and god engines. Nuntio Dolores was angered that it was not the first to fire, and increased speed to the first at the walls. Laser blasters and volcano cannon roared simultaneously at a tower. Alarms blared all over the Cizella as the reactor spiked dangerously, but neither Heretek nor the Titan cared about the stress. Void shields collapsed around the bastion, and it rained its own guns on the approaching warlord. Heretek screamed violent words from languages he did not know. As soon as the volcano cannon was charged again, he fired it. Though more Tosins blared, warning of overheating and the damage it could cause the gun. The cannon's beam bored through the rain, turning precipitation to roiling steam and carving its ionization mark into the air. The tower's base evaporated. Laser blaster shots riddled it, tearing the breach wider, and the tower slumped down, falling from the wall, tearing out a hole in the reinforced rockcrete. Pathetic streaks of lasgun shots stabbed out from the walls either side, where desperate men waited to die. Heretek sidestepped the tumble of rubble slipping down the hill, leaning his machine into the rising slope. There was no divide between he and the creature bound to the Titan. They were one, and he felt the body of the machine as his own. Every drop of rain that hit his armor, the slip of the mountainside as he climbed upwards, the pressure in the Titan's hydraulic tubing, and play of the motive force down every cable. He knew it better than his own body. He laughed madly, carried away with the sensations filling him, urged on by the need to spill blood. "Brutus! Brutus!" he cackled. "Had you told me what you had for me, I would have said yes immediately!" He reached the wall with his mighty fist. He gripped the breach left by the fallen tower and heaved, pulling the Titan through the line. The disruption field surrounding the Ariok's fingers rent the atomic structure of the fortifications apart, and he was forced to dig deeper and deeper as he hauled himself up. As he passed through, his cockpit head was level with the rampart. Terrified men in sealed rainwear fired into his face. They were within the Aegis, and their shots bored into the armor, but they could not harm him. Heretic laughed. It emerged from the Titan's war horns as a diabolical sound that froze the soldiers or sent them fleeing. He shouldered his way further in, swiveling his laser blasters to gun down the men as they ran. When he was into the ring on the inside of the walls, the ground had been planed flat to allow gun engines to bolster the defenses, and the going became easy. He stalked around the ring towards the Axis Road, firing at will, targeting shield generators and munition jumps, blowing out the backs of towers and mowing down infantry by the score. His brothers in blood were making their own ingress points, tearing and blasting through the walls. Only one of their number had succumbed to the enemy. It burned as it walked under heavy fire, before finally succumbing and falling down. For a moment it lay still, and then something in it gave. A sheet of fire roared skywards. For a moment it was a face screaming out a mix of frustration and joy at release. Then nothing but scattered lightning racing off through the yellow cloud. "He does not care!" Heretic said giddily. "He does not care whence the blood flows!" Alarms sounded all over the Imperial defenses. The rising, falling wail that had heralded destruction since the dawn of machine-aided wars. A squadron of tanks edged around a bastion and opened fire. Heretic slew them all with a volcano shot. The minor spirits of the guns squealed in anguish. Coolant levels flashed at near depleted. It did not matter. The guns on the upper levels had yet to begin firing on the lowest line, but that would not be long coming. Nuntio Dolores screamed up at them in challenge. A war horn answered. Down the road from the second line a loyal warlord strode. Rain poured from its carapace, soaking its banners. Lightning and gunfire flash-lit up its livery, blue and gold. A black sun was the principal device on its badge, that of the Legio Astorum, the Warp Runners. Water ran over its nameplate, Hegemon. Like Nuntio Dolores, it was equipped for close-quarter fighting. A claw, the match of Heretic's own, hung at its right side, and a Sun Fury cannon was its left hand. It swung off the road and marched towards Heretic's machine in direct challenge. War horns blaring, Hegemon opened fire. Rockets roared from the arrays atop the carapace, slamming into Heretic's voids. Alarms sang from every quarter as the first two shields collapsed. Heretics made to fire with the volcano cannon, but it would not respond. A hot pain burned his fingers. He remembered himself a little. Pulled back from the glorious angry heat of the Titan's new soul, and saw that the cannon's coolant was depleted. The laser blasters, too, had shut down for emergency cooling. He screamed impotently as more rockets weakened his third shield. Nuntio Dolores' voice scorned for its foe, a dry cut short when the Sun Fury fired. A broad beam of electric white light slammed into Heretic's final shield and took it down. The plasma stream splashed against his left arm, bringing forth a cry of sympathetic pain from Heretic. He bit hard, drawing blood from his tongue. Nuntio Dolores roared, molten metal hissed from the wound. The upper arm section was weakened. Voices and Tosins in the Cizella yammered for his attention. Through a mouthful of blood, he tried to speak. "Open fire! Open fire!" For a moment he was within his own skull again. The Cizella was full of smoke. His Moderati lolled in their chairs, seemingly dead, though none had a mark on them. He blinked, and for a split second he saw an organic chamber of pulsing membranes filled with dark blood. He blinked again. The room was as it should be. His Moderati worked. He moved his hand to his helm and stopped. Vicious matter coated his sleeves and the throne's arm, only reluctantly letting him move. He stared at it, suddenly feeling lost. An impact rocked the Titan. Hegemon had closed. Bolts exploded all over Nuntio Dolores' front plating as it drew back its fist for a final strike. Heretic let out a wordless roar, and Nuntio Dolores reached out from the fresh-minted hellscape of the manifold and dragged him back in. Bound together in sacred union once more, the entity that was Nuntio Dolores and Heretic, combined, lunged forward. Its own Ariok reached and grabbed, closing on Hegemon's fist as it descended for the killing blow. Disruption fields crackled and banged as loudly as the artillery, or as loudly as the artillery as they meshed. For a second, the Titans were locked together, neither gaining advantage over the others. The Sun Fury rotated towards Nuntio Dolores' midriff, charging coils lighting for a kill shot, but Heretic leaned into it, blocking it out with his volcano cannon. It fired anyway, the stream streaking past him harmlessly. Slowly, Nuntio Dolores forced Hegemon's claw backwards. There should have been little disparity between the Titans. They were of the same mark and similar patterns. But although damaged, Nuntio Dolores was undoubtedly stronger. Hegemon's arm was forced away. The Titan pressed its feet into the ground and leaned into its foe, but Nuntio Dolores pushed it back, its claw toes ripping up the paved surface of the defenses. A stealthy chime sounded, informing him the laser blasters were ready to fire again. Heretic shouted. Nuntio Dolores roared. With a great shove, he rammed the enemy Titan backwards and yanked down hard. Hegemon's claw came free in his fist. Heretic took a step back, laser blasters swiveled down to point directly at the enemy's faceplate. With a thought, he fired, and as the bolts of light smashed into his foe, he saw an axe descending over and over again. Hegemon stumbled backwards and tripped, going down hard. Heretic left its corpse steaming in the rain. "Engine kill!" said a voice that no machine could make, a dark and demonic growl full of pleasure at the slaughter. It rang throughout the Titan, but it was loudest in the pits of Heretic's soul. "A skull for the Lord of Skulls!" said the voice. "A skull for the Blood Throne!" it said, and Heretic whispered along with it. Blood from his tongue ran down his chin. "Blood! Blood! Blood!" it growled. Then Heretic took up his chant and shouted, "Blood for the Blood God!" The Titan screamed its victory to the world. The remaining possessed engines added their voices to the song. The first line had been breached by Legio Volpa's mechanical berserkers. The time was now, they signaled. Victory was nigh. Out in the waste, war horns answered. 100 god engines of the War Master's most favored Legio advanced in line. Their pennants soaked by the downpour. Red and black they were. Their liveries unmarked by months of war that had consumed their sibling orders by the dozens, save for the final destructive task of bringing down the Carthaga Telepathica. They had spent time others filled with fighting, regrouping, repairing, and preparing. They were fresh where others were exhausted, supplied where others carried empty weapons. Maniple after maniple of them emerged from the storm, ready and eager for the test ahead. Guns rippled out a hasty response from all tiers of the mountain's defenses. It would not be enough. Legio Mortis, kept out of battle for many months, strode out of the rain in its entirety. Whew. I think that's a good place to wrap up here for tonight. We made some good progress. We're heading into the final game, the end game, if you will. Warhammer 30K end game. I hope you guys have been enjoying the book. We're getting ever closer to the end. I fucking love this mecha combat shit. Honestly, this is probably one of the best portrayals of Titan combat that I've read in a 40k book. I actually think it's better than the original OG Titan battle book, Titanicus by Dan Abnett. I think this is a much more mecha portrayal of it, which I think is actually much more applicable than some of the other ways that Titan combat has been portrayed in 40k novels. So I hope you guys have been enjoying it. That is going to be it for today. If you haven't done so already, please give me a follow here on Twitch. You can give me a sub over on YouTube where you can get every other chapter of this if for whatever reason you decided to jump in on stream 8 of this read-along. There's also all of my other VODs there as well as my D&D campaigns that I've streamed. You can also join, you can follow me on Blue Sky and see all of my cool and unhinged thoughts. And you can join my Discord, the Eternal Citadel, and be a part of my incredible community. I want you all to know you're all beautiful, amazing, and valid people, and I hope you enjoyed spending your evening with me nearly as much as I enjoyed spending it with you. And never forget the most important part, which is the world is better having you in it. That'll be it for our streams for the week. And so... sorry, just a lot of reading. We're gonna raid my boys, the old AP crew. If you're a follower, please copy down the call to hugs message. If you are a sub, please copy down the Knights message, and let's go send them lots of love. They're certified good beans. I do declare good beans here and there. All right, everybody. I hope you guys have a wonderful night and the sweetest of dreams. Bye!